Although India's entire wildlife conservation drive was started for and inspired by the tiger, national policy has failed it. Today, 30 years after the initiative began, the tiger faces the biggest crisis ever. Shrinking habitats, determined poachers and an apathetic government. Swati Tyagarajan reports.
A tiger, they say, does not change its stripes. If only that were true of India's national policy and passion to save the tiger. In the 1970s, dwindling tiger numbers raised an alarm across the country and Project Tiger came into being. National parks and sanctuaries were established specifically for the tiger, and protection of the Royal Bengal became priority number one. Under the new Project Tiger, the government in 1973 conducted the first survey on tiger populations and concluded that there were 1,827 tigers in the country. Fast forward 30 years. Today we are officially left with less tigers than when Project Tiger began, about 1,500. Project Tiger is now the National Tiger Conservation Authority, a much more important sounding name, but the ground realities hit a new low every year. Most of our tiger areas are reeling under habitat loss and poaching. We have 33% vacancies in most of our parks across the country. Forest guards do not get their salaries on time. Most of them are past retirement age, and many of them are part-time guards who have never been made permanent. Case in point, last month, the Orang National Park in Assam, where part-time guards who have been in the job for over a decade went on a strike this year, and 2 tigers were killed in their absence. The guards do not have decent equipment. Most of them have never had any formal training, and if there is still dedication, it comes from the individual and not from the system. So even after all the tigers in the Mammoth Sariska Reserve disappeared by 2005, throwing up every flaw in our approach to tiger conservation, the policy still flounders.
I think 2.5 years ago, when Sariska's tigers went extinct, the Prime Minister created a tiger task force. Sadly, he appointed a chairperson and 2 other members who had no knowledge whatsoever about tigers. And the end result of that report is that it talks more about coexistence. It took policy away from developing protection or the art of protection to looking at how you can live with wild tigers. And because of this, we created a tribal rights bill which also looked at coexistence. It became the menu of the day. The fashion of the day was coexistence with tigers. Then we have a tiger conservation authority that was also stuffed with people who had no knowledge of tigers. Just one person, an elderly gentleman, has some knowledge of tigers. The rest have no experience with tigers. In fact, instead of a tiger scientist, they put an elephant scientist into this committee.
Our wildlife laws are very strong, but implementation is abysmal. Technically, anyone who's killed a tiger is supposed to get 7 years in prison. But poachers never get caught. In India so far, there's been just 1 conviction in a tiger poaching case. And the promised Wildlife Crime Bureau to rein in poaching is yet to even be established. There is no coordination or liaising with local communities. Instead of getting local people involved with the protection of the parks and making them stakeholders in the future of the tiger, a dead tiger has become more profitable than a live one. Even more astonishing is that the park's own gate receipts, which are in crores at Ranthambore or Corbett or Bandhavgarh, don't go directly back into the park, but to a central common fund, which is then allocated, thereby giving no park any incentive to perform any better. Tiger biologists, who are tiger behavior experts, have hardly ever been consulted to frame policy. But recognizing a huge crisis looming, only recently the government has consented to take a few new steps.
Last week at the National Board of Wildlife, a detailed presentation was made. Actually, I made the presentation, a half-an-hour presentation, and I think the Prime Minister left the meeting knowing that coexistence with tigers is not possible. This was a myth which was advocated by people who knew nothing about tigers. He also went away knowing that the adverse impacts of a tribal rights bill or a forest rights bill need to be kept away from national parks and sanctuaries, from the tigers in violet homes. Otherwise, there would be disaster. Now, if there's follow-up today after that meeting by the Ministry of Environment and Forests, we would have at least corrected the policy that went wrong in the last 3 years.
To be in the tiger's domain, to see a tiger in the wild is an unbelievable experience. It is an experience we owe the future generations of this country. If in this time of crisis we don't find the inspiration to save something as beautiful as the tiger, what will we find the inspiration to save? Swati Tyagarajan, NDTV.